you don't just get rich, wealthy, and successful just from nowhere. You have to overcome certain things, and it pressures you, it molds you into becoming this individual. And it's up to you if you use that pain to make you bitter or to make you better.
What if there are things we never had the opportunity to learn? We've all been to school or training, but there are things they never taught us that actually make a powerful difference in life. I'm here to share with you all the pieces you've been missing: mindset, health, success, and more. And we'll all learn together from guests along the way. We may not have learned it the traditional way, but oh my goodness, let's keep learning how to do things differently. OMG, here we are again. I am excited about this episode. You know how sometimes life doesn't go the way we pictured it would? In fact, maybe that happens most of the time. Things don't happen the way we thought they would. So many of my guests have ended up in fields that they didn't think they'd work in, or having adventures that they never imagined they would have. And this is true for me as well. Had I not started a business and made a career change, I would not be here today. So, since this is something that we all might struggle with at one point or another, my guest today is joining me to talk about reinventing ourselves and finding fulfillment. So, because many of us face difficult situations that force us to reassess our goals and aspirations, in his #1 best-selling book, Answer the Call: Life Lessons from Family Origins Through Invention and Struggle, Jorge Gonzalez shares his personal journey of reinvention and offers practical insights on how you can do the same. He spent 2 decades perfecting his craft and then was faced with a disability, leaving him unable to continue working in his chosen field. And rather than succumbing to anger about that, he drew inspiration from his family's legacy and found a new way forward. Now he, through his book and coaching sessions, shares the lesson that with the right mindset, setbacks can be transformed into opportunities for growth and self-discovery. And I love that and fully agree. So welcome, George.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you today.
Excellent. Yeah, we're going to have a good chat about this for sure. And I think it's going to be meaningful to people. So let's dive right in, because we're going to talk about reinventing ourselves. And when I introduced you, people maybe heard a little tiny piece of that, but let's start with your story. Tell us how you came to reinvent yourself.
Well, reinventing myself was a somewhat of a painful accident. I was in a career field in warehouse distribution and logistics. I was in management, and I actually had an accident and I fell and I dislocated 3 discs in my body. And that disabled me for about 3.5 years. I couldn't even lift a gallon of milk. I couldn't sit for long periods of times, lay down for long periods of times, or even stand for long periods of time. So I was in a lot of horrible pain. I was heavily medicated. I had no choice because this injury was so new. And that medication put me in a very, very dark place. Depression, suicidal thoughts. I was seeing things and hearing things that I wasn't supposed to be hearing or seeing, as many people can imagine when you're medicated. And it was just horrible for me. And but when I was able to pull myself out of there, I had to, through this voice, I was like, okay, well, now what am I supposed to do now? And I heard this most sweetest, most powerful whisper, and this was the first time I ever heard this voice. But I knew whose voice that belonged to, and it said real estate. And I was like, okay, real estate, okay. I'm familiar with real estate. I've been involved in real estate since I was 14 years old, doing kitchen and bathroom models and rehabs with my dad and my uncle. So I had the foundation of real estate. So I figured that that would be an easy transition for me. And it was. It was an easy transition for me. I closed 12 deals my first 16 months as a real estate agent. And that's how I was able to reinvent myself into that career. I never would have thought that I would ever become a real estate agent.
Right.
But that accident and that whole scenario that I went through, and hearing that voice and being obedient to that voice, is what actually put me into becoming a real estate agent.
It's, we don't want to have to go through these things, but it's interesting how many people have had to deal with something really, really hard, and it's turned out to be something good in the end.
It's almost like we're supposed to suffer to really find ourselves. Unfortunately, some people suffer more than others, and that's really heartbreaking to hear because, of course, many people we hear their stories. But looking back, I'm like, wait a minute, every time I went forward, I went through some dramatic event and that really opened up, it uncovered layers of something. But had that event not happened, that would not have been the case.
Right. And I appreciate you sharing that too. I'm sure there are people listening who've been through some really tough things, and sometimes it's hard to see our way out of it. Okay, so your book gives really a lot of great lessons for dealing with this. And one of the things that jumped out to me as we're thinking about a time of change was you talked about getting a mentor. So tell us a little bit more about that part of it.
My very first mentor, before I even know what a mentor was at the age of 14. My father was an alcoholic, and my mom actually told her younger brother to look out for me because I was she felt like I was being lost in my neighborhood. Stayed out late, roaming on the street. And my uncle reached out to me. He was a truck driver. He was a auto painter. He painted cars. He also played the guitar. He was a songwriter, and he was able to really help me and help me navigate those teenage years. And I didn't know what that mentor was until I was introduced to personal development. And I was like, wait a minute, my uncle was my first mentor. I didn't realize that. So that's something very dear that I hold. And I told him one day that he was like a second father. He was like a second father to me because of what he did for me, because he guided me to make sure that I didn't get lost to my neighborhood, because back in the 90s when I was growing up through the 90s, it was really rough.
Right.
And I'm really glad he was there for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And family doesn't always work out that way. So that's a powerful
Yeah.
thing for sure. Yeah. Have you had any other mentor experiences that have been meaningful as well?
Oh, absolutely. As I entered the career field, I always had like a supervisor or a manager that would, just drop these little nuggets of wisdom. And me being the always the observant person and always willing to learn, and I always want to better myself because I knew that I wanted to really be somebody that my family would be proud of. So that's how I was able to move in management. And then being exposed to certain books and certain trainings, certain coachings in my company, offering certain personal development and also courses, going to different states as an extension of that curriculum at that my job place. And then when I first read the book Think and Grow Rich, it changed my life forever. And I was actually disappointed because that book was introduced to me 10 years before I actually read it. And that in itself was like a domino effect of me wanting to read more books just like that,
Right.
of Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Yes,
and
great ones.
how to win friends and influence people, The Alchemist, and just any books along that nature. And when I would reading these books, I'm like, this can't be. Are they talking about me? Are they
Right.
talking about my traits? I didn't know what my traits were, what they were called, what they meant, or so it was almost like it was re it was like exposing the real me, and like, wait a minute, I'm not this ugly duckling, I'm not this weirdo, of the family and whatnot, and weirdo of my friends. I'm like this individual, so I have to surround myself by individuals that not only are the writers of these books and this material, but also people that are like this, that are actually reading these materials, because
Yes.
that's where I belong. And it took me a while, but then I started finding people that were similar mindsets, and I just kept gravitating into that.
Yeah, it's interesting. My path was kind of similar, and those books are fantastic. And I will make sure to add them to the reading list. I had no idea about personal development at all, just like you're saying, and was introduced with a book and then a book and then maybe something I could listen to. And gradually it became life changing. So it's really powerful.
I never would have thought that what I would have walked on fire at Tony Robbins' event. When I did that, oh my God, I was like, what can really stop me now?
Right. Right. And the more we think that, the more likely that we can do what we're aiming to do. Yeah. Okay. So let's say that someone is listening and they're thinking, okay, this sounds interesting. I've been through some stuff, but maybe I could do it. Maybe I could turn it around, like he's saying. So, what if we want to make a change, but we aren't sure to what? How do we figure out where our gifts and talents are if we want to do something different?
For me, that answer to the question has always been so easy for me, but I didn't know why it was. But when I wrote my book, I was given access to really bring the pieces together of my entire journey, because there has things that I have known, like this knowing that I knew some things, but not really know where I got that information from. But when I wrote the book, I was going to call my book American Inventor because I'm also an inventor. And the day that I was finalizing the title, I heard this most powerful, sweetest voice I've ever heard in my life. And this was the second time I've heard that voice. So I knew whose voice that was. And that voice said, answer the call.
Mm.
And I heard it a second time. And I was on the phone with my publishing company. And then I said it out loud. And I said, answer the call. And my publishing company said, George, what is that? That's the name of the book. Where did you get that from? It was just whispered to me. And they even said, okay, we're scrapping American Inventor and we're going with Answer the Call. 2 weeks later, the meaning to Answer the Call came to me 2 weeks later. And Answer the Call is about finding your gifts, your talents, and pursuing your life's purpose. So how do we do that? Well, what are we good at? What do we love to do? If money was not an option, what would we be willing to do for the rest of our lives if money was not an option?
Right.
And keep in mind something. Society has made us believe that a hobby is just a hobby, and it's not. A hobby is a gift and it's a talent. And if you have the courage to work on your gifts and your crafts and your talents, and you have the courage to showcase them and share them, you would see that that is probably your life purpose, that your craft, your gift, and your talent is meant to motivate and inspire somebody, either through the music that you write, the sculptures that you create, the paintings that you paint, or any of those things that I cannot do because I'm not good at those things. But what I do know is that when I see a beautiful painting, they speak to you.
Yes.
Life, it's like you can see a painting, it's like, oh my God, this is talking about life. This is talking about sorrow. This is talking about, overcoming obstacles. That's what paintings do to us. And the same thing happens with music. You're like, oh my God, that song is talking to me. What is going on here? How do they know my story? And this is
Absolutely.
this is how we're able to overcome certain things in our lives. So that's what I would say. What are you good at? What are you passionate about? What do you love to do? And if money was not an option, what would you want to do for the rest of your life? And chances are it is right there.
Yes, and isn't it interesting? We're not really used to thinking that way, because the first time somebody asked me, well, if you keep doing what you're doing, where will you be in 5 years? I was like, same place, I had never thought of doing anything else. I had never sat down and thought, if I could choose anything and money didn't matter, as you're saying, what would I do? I mean, that could be challenging to think about at first.
It is.
We just don't do it.
It truly is. And talking about something like, where would you be at if in 5 years if you kept doing it? So when I was 39 years old, I was already an inventor. I built a prototype, and my daughter had used it for 4 to 5 years. She became a 5-time All-Star, 1-year Rookie of the Year, and 1-year MVP. And then she transitioned from slow pitch to fast pitch in high school, playing JV freshman, sophomore year. And I was at work. This was before my accident. I was at work in my lunch break, looking out the window, and I was like, I looked up and I said, God, you gave me this invention. I know you gave me this gift, but yet I'm surrounded by these walls here, not being able to do anything with it. And a week later, I had the accident. A week later. So a week later, it really, I was able to spend more time with my daughter, also heavily medicated. And now when I wrote the book, I realized that accident made my story even more juicier. It allowed me, that journey and those stories allowed me to put these lessons and these stories in my book. So had these things not happened to me, the book wouldn't have been written yet. It might have been written 5, 10, or 15 years down the road. But the fact that I said, well, what's going on? Be careful what you ask for, right?
That's true.
I was trying to rush the process, and I guess I did rush the process, and that was the outcome, was the accident, or whatever the case. I was supposed to have this journey of certain things happen to me, and I believe that I speeded up, and that's what happened. And during the pandemic, I was called to write the book, I was obedient to write it, and I was able to place the stories in there that I believed were meaningful stories that I can help somebody overcome certain things, like the loss of my father and whatnot, and then also the foundation of my grandparents, their sacrifice and whatnot, and really the things that makes a person like a real round individual, and that's what I was able to put in my book. But so yeah, I mean, but through these bad, we call bad events, is what really pushes us forward. And now I'm an author, a published author, bestseller. And now I'm going to colleges, universities. I'm going on podcasts and sharing the story. And hopefully that my humble story is able to motivate and inspire the people to really get themselves out of that dark place and maybe reinvent
Right.
themselves.
The first place I learned the path that would take me towards mindset and leadership and life coaching was my network marketing social selling business. And thank goodness I had Kristen Voss's Social Selling Academy to inspire me and to teach me, because I had a lot to learn. These are things we don't come out of school knowing. So if you're in social selling or direct sales, or you're thinking about it, take a look at joining the Social Selling Academy. I have a $100 off coupon for you. Go check it out at omgteachme.com/recommendations. And I really like how you organize the book, actually, where you're talking through the different people in your life and the different times in your life and what lessons did you learn? What lessons did you learn? Because I don't know if we always look at all the events in our lives and go back and think, wow, what did I learn from this? But I'm sure there's something.
When I speak to people, and I love teaching by stories, right? And whenever I'm mentoring or coaching somebody, or just guiding somebody that might gravitate to me, I talk to them about stories, but I don't tell them the outcome or just half stuff. I kind of go to the beginning first, touch on it, and then I kind of bring other pieces so they can know, okay, this is what he's talking about, and it's relatable to these events, and this is what really got him here and out of that situation. Because anybody could tell us, oh yeah, I'm a millionaire, I created this, but how did you really do it? Mm-hmm. What did you have to overcome? First of all, because people need to understand that you don't just get rich, wealthy, and successful just from nowhere. You have to overcome certain things, and it pressures you, it molds you into becoming this individual. And it's up to you if you use that pain to make you better or to make you better. And for me, I used it to make me better and really keep my pure heart, where I don't want to be mad, upset when I talk to people. I want them to feel that the compassion coming out of me when I talk about these things, that look, even though I went through this, and I know you're going through it too, but we're all gonna make it. But you just have to believe in yourself that you can and you will, therefore you will.
Right. And sometimes in the middle of something that's really hard or really painful, it's a challenge to see that, for sure. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It wasn't easy for me either. I'll tell you that. I mean, I might sound like, oh my God, George seems like he came out pretty clean. It's like, no. I came out with a lot of tears, stressful nights, sleepless nights. Like I said, I was heavily medicated, suicidal thoughts. I mean, I really wanted to hurt myself, but thank God that I didn't, that I was able to be stronger than that voice in that urge, and really hold on to my faith. And that's really what helped me through that as well.
Right. Yeah, it's powerful. And so hopefully, listeners, you're hearing that, we're all gonna sort of hit a roadblock or go through things. And hopefully, as George, you said earlier, hopefully it doesn't have to be as painful, or, it doesn't have to be as traumatic, but maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. But if we can look for the lessons and look for the positive things to come out of that, that's going to be life-changing, I think. Mm-hmm. So you just said it a minute ago, and you talk about this in your book too, and that is believing in yourself. So how can we get even better about believing in ourselves, and how did you kind of grow that in yourself too?
I want to say that I am no different than a lot of us people, your listeners and yourself. I'm not a whole lot different. I think we have a lot of similarities. And what I'm about to say, I don't say this very lightly, but I've always had this feeling, this knowing that I was special. And I've always had this feeling and this knowing that my life had purpose and there was a huge calling on my life. And I want to say that I'm not the only one that feels this way. I believe there's a lot of us that feel this way, but we're afraid of that. We're afraid that I'm just making this up. I'm just being weird or I'm crazy. No, you're not. And no, you're not weird. If you have a knowing and you believe that you are special and that you are gifted and you are talented, you may not know what it looks like yet because I didn't know what it looked like for a very long time.
Right.
But I held on to that knowing and I had faith that I had something powerful and great to give to the world. But it didn't expose itself until I wrote the book. When I was given the ability and the authority to write my book, and I was obedient to that, and I listened to call it answer the call instead of American Inventor. I was also being obedient, and that right there made me understand that I'm supposed to share that message to the world so they too can follow their gifts or talents and pursue their life purpose because we all have one. We just
Yeah.
gotta go deep back inside of us and uncover that again because we've silenced it for so long that we forget what we're good at. We forget what we love to do, and we forget what we used to say. You know what? Whenever I'm rich, I want to feed the homeless. I want to create this nonprofit. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do that. We forget about those things because it's never going to happen to me again. It's never going to happen to me because it's taking so long. But the moment that we tap into that, oh my God, then you remember, this is what I'm good at. This is what I want to do.
Yes.
This is my passion.
Yes. You know, it's interesting when people ask me, because my podcast is less than a year old at this point, and people ask me, well, do you like it? Do you enjoy doing it? And I say, I love it. And I sort of have a sense of what you're talking about because I think this is part of what I was meant to do. And I think when people find that, there's just such a I'm stretching to even think of the word, such a joy about it or peace.
The word you're looking for is fulfillment.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. Yes.
And I talk about that word so strongly when I'm talking to people because what we're looking for in life, it's not the goody goody feeling. What we're looking for is fulfillment. And until we find fulfillment, we will never be happy. Sometimes people say, when I marry my partner, when I find my soulmate, I'm gonna be fulfilled. That's not fulfillment because you're dependent on somebody else. When you find fulfillment, is because something fills you because you're giving to somebody else. So I'm happiest when I give,
Yes.
not when I receive. It's when I give. So we're supposed to give more because that's where we find fulfillment. And motivate and inspire people doing your podcast and the things that we do. This is what gives us that feeling.
Wow, yes. I need to use that word more often because I fully 100% agree with you. And it just feels completely different than other things that I do in life or have done in the past. And so I know that that must be true for everyone. You know, when we find that, it's just powerful. Let me just see what you'll say to this because I'm just always trying to imagining who's listening, what might they be thinking. And so, you know, we're talking about things that aren't about money and income and things that are really powerful that we can do with our lives. But the reality is, of course, we need money and income. So what would you say to someone who says, well, I don't know how to kind of separate that. I have to worry about the money.
So there's nothing wrong with making money from your gift and your talent. If you, like I said, if you create something, if you create or you innovate something and you place it in people's hands, they're going to pay you for that because now you're making their life easier. It's like the phone, the internet, the computer, the car, anything in between. We use these things to make our lives easier.
Right.
So for myself, I mean, I offer my book for free. There's 3 versions. I offer the book for free because it's about sharing the story. But I also know a lot of people are not going to download it for free. Some are going to pay the online version. And I know some people want to get the paperback version because they need to have something in their hand. And I know that a lot of people are out there like me that believe in the power of energy and words.
Yes.
This is why people are around libraries, right? And then being on podcasts and being on stages, people pay me for speaking. So it's not like I'm doing everything for free.
Right.
But I'm giving a lot of things away. Like when I'm having a conversation, I don't hold back and say, buy my book and you'll read about it. I'll continue with the nuggets and drop the knowledge in the stories and the lessons. And if they feel like they want to even dig deeper in it, they can pick up the book. But I'm not going to hold anything back. Same thing when I'm on stage. I'm not going to say, well, if you want to know the answer to that, pick up my book. I'm never going to say that. Or come see me speak somewhere and I'll talk more in detail. I'm never going to say that.
Yeah, I like that outlook because if we sort of keep our minds open to finding what we enjoy and what we're good at and what we would do no matter what, when we put that out into the world and serve people, as you're saying, provide something that people want, then I really do believe that income as well as many other good things are going to come back. I agree.
I believe so too. People will start donating to you as well too, opening up doors for you that gives you the ability to make some money, maybe a connection, or you never know. Somebody might say, look, I love your story so much. I want to put you on television or a movie, a mini series or whatever, because you're giving.
Right.
So
Right.
you give, that maybe the person that you give to might not be the necessary person that would pay you per se, for the most part sometimes, but maybe they know somebody that has the ability and that has the connections that you might need later down the line.
So it's about just kind of keeping an open mind and saying, I don't know what's going to happen, but this is what I meant to do.
I had a dream that one of my podcast interviews went viral and got millions and millions of followers because of that. Now, I don't know which one went viral. I just know
Right.
one of them went viral.
Right. Right.
So there's going to be two people that are going to benefit here, myself and that person on that podcast.
Yep.
But also, directly or indirectly, it's going to be everybody that heard that message.
Right.
So we're all these millions of people are going to be connected through the messages in that conversation that took place on that particular episode.
I love that because I think we also want to get in the habit of just allowing ourselves to imagine amazing things that could happen, because if we can't even imagine it, we're certainly not headed in that direction. Imagining it is kind of the first step, and then we see where we go.
I see myself on stage in front of 50,000 people is what I see myself on stage. And I know that's going to happen because I already seen it. It's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when it's going to happen.
I love it. Okay, so I know that this has intrigued people. I'm sure of it. I've enjoyed this conversation. So how can people find you, follow you, connect with you, and get your book?
I am the most active on Instagram. You can find me under my name at George_V_Gonzalez. And if you go to my bio, you'll find a link, and it'll give you access to everything that I have.
Great.
You can download my book there for free. I also have a real estate mini course, how to close your first 12 deals in your first 16 months. And I also have booking information. And if anybody wants to book me for a speaking engagement, or anybody wants to refer me to a speaking engagement, all my information is there. And like I said, I want to make sure that people that are listening, at least if they have the ability to download at least the free version of the book and really dig deep on those lessons, so put yourself in my shoes there, put your family in those positions, and really understand that this is the journey and these are the lessons, and then kind of compare it to your life and see what kind of lessons are there, because I assure you that there's some lessons there hidden in plain sight.
Yes.
That you can grab and utilize and really catapult your life forward and really help you through some of these difficult times that many of us have gone through.
What a fantastic summary of what we've been talking about. I really like the way that you said that. And so I will make sure that information about where they can find you is in the show notes as well. So everybody have a look there. And so one more question for you, because I am always adding to a playlist on Spotify of songs that all my different guests really love to put them in a good mood, to just listen to when they want to feel good. So tell us, what is the song you would pick that would be your favorite for that?
My music and the way I was raised, I'm actually gravitating away from that music now, even though it increased my energy, or it raised up my vibe. But I grew up with rap music. And R&B music and whatnot, and Mexican ranchera music. But it's all about having fun and partying, which is good for the energy vibes. But recently, about a year ago, I really gravitated into more like spiritual uplifting music. And I've realized that it's helping me even heal at a very deeper level. So now I'll open up my Pandora and just go in there and listen to that type of music, whether if I'm meditating, exercising, stretching, going for walks, or even driving in my car. And I realized that this music, like it penetrates my soul and my spirit, and it makes me feel alive.
Yes.
And this is different music. And there's a particular song that is extremely famous, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have listened to. I think it's called Spirit. And every time I listen to it, it just gives me like the chills because it's so beautiful and it makes me feel alive.
And I actually have a podcast episode about the power of music because I just really, you know, on that episode, we even talked about how it helps us to get through the hard times and feel the hard emotions and kind of work through that. So just so many things, which is why I started this list of songs. So I will find that one.
There's a YouTube video where they play heavy metal music, and then they play soothing music, and the water crystals change.
Yes, yes.
That's how powerful music is.
And I will have to see if I can find that video and share it on social media too, because I know what you're talking about, and it is really quite interesting.
I showed that to my daughter not too long ago. Look, baby, be careful what music you listen to because this is the effects of music. And if our bodies are 70 to 80% water,
yes,
imagine the effects that it's doing on us.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again for joining me today, George. This has been a really great conversation, and I know people are going to get a lot out of it. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I want to pull out a few things that were pretty powerful that came out of that conversation. First of all, you heard him mention a few times that he was kind of following a voice that he heard, and so that could be prayer, it could be faith, it could be intuition, it could be a gut instinct. I love the idea of following this intuition, this power that we can sense, because there is something there that tends to be right. And I'll put the link to the intuition episode in the show notes because I did an episode on that, and I think it's really, really powerful. And then I would also say, pay attention to who you are spending your time with, because woven through this were a few times where we talked about mentors and we talked about learning from books and learning from other trainings, and then realizing that the more we surround ourselves with people who are thinking in this kind of growth way and who are lifting us up and enjoy us lifting them up, the more we're going to grow. And I love that came out of this conversation. And the third thing that I really want to make sure you hear is that growth happens for us outside of our comfort zone. So it's true that we'll go through hard things in life. Nobody's guaranteed to skip all of that, right? And as he and I both said a few times, hopefully it's not the most hard things necessarily, but part of that is growth. It's okay to be a little bit outside of our comfort zone and a little uncomfortable if we know the direction that we're going and we're headed somewhere that we've envisioned or we know feels like exactly the right direction for us to be going in. So he went through some very, very serious issues. And if you're going through very serious issues, please reach out for help. You're not alone. Absolutely. If something very traumatic is happening for you, there is help. And at the same time, I do agree that sometimes things that we go through teach us lessons. It's so valuable to look back and see that. And so just let that be something you think about. What have you learned from? Where have you been a bit outside your comfort zone? It's been a little bit challenging, but now you see, oh, I get it. This is where I was headed. This is where I was going. So let that sit with you a little bit, and thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. OMG, I would be so honored if you would take a moment, leave a rating, leave a review, or take a screenshot and share on your social media. Let's get this message out further into the world. Now it's time to head down to the show notes to see the resources I mentioned. We may not have learned this before, but it sure is powerful now.